welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. It's Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And we'd like to invite you to visit badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, where you can find all of our other episodes, our sponsor page, which we would love you to visit, and see if you can give them any of your business, because they do make this podcast possible. And while you're there, you can scroll down and enter your email address, and we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are on Patreon, and we would love to see you over there enjoying our Zoom Hangouts every month and our extra episodes, our mini podcasts, and all of the fun things that we're doing. So you can head to the link at the top of the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, and check out the tiers and see if any of them appeal to you. And you can also, we're still holding our ongoing giveaway for people who leave reviews around the internet. So you can leave a written review on iTunes or wherever else, whatever app or podcast thing that you listen on. And you can write it, you can do the stars, you can do whatever, and send a screenshot along with your address over to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll send you a little goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing and public cards. And people are doing it, so don't hesitate. I know some people don't like to, send an email and ask for things, but just do it. You don't even have to ask. You just send a screenshot with your address, and I know what you're doing. So we send it along.
We do send them. I was in the post office yesterday.
Yes, Dianne
sending them out.
She gave me the holiday post office scene update.
Yeah,
was it a madhouse?
The line was pretty long. It went pretty fast though, and the people were so friendly. Like everybody was really friendly yesterday.
Oh my God, you don't live in Chicago. Oh my God, our post office is the worst. The one that's right near me. It's the worst post office on the planet. You can look it up anywhere wherever you are. Google Devon Avenue, Rogers Park, Chicago, Devon Avenue post office. And the reviews are hilarious. It's got 1 star or something. All ththese reviews about how rude people are. Anyway,
I digress. I'm totally going to. I'm writing it down so I don't forget, because I want to look at the review. Who reviews the post office? That's hilarious.
You have to. You have to review this one, because when you go there, I think I've even left a review, because I'm just like, oh my God. I walk out and I'm like, oh no, oh God. I have to just leave a review. You're just compelled to when you're there. Yes, 1.5 stars, 385 reviews.
Oh my gosh.
And it's just terrible.
So we are very happy that we have more than 1.5 stars on Google. Thanks to everybody who has done a review for us. We thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The podcast has much better reviews, thank God. And some negative ones, but that happens. It's not because we're rude. Although one was because we were rude, but I disagree. And we made a t-shirt out of one. Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, you can also head to the badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com has a link to our merchandise, and you can get stuff with our logo on it, and the one with the 2-star reviews, somewhat informational, somewhat horribly offensive. Which was my favorite thing ever, and it had to go on a t-shirt.
It was fantastic. I loved it.
And the horribly offensive thing was that we were encouraging people to set up a safe bed sharing thing in their house, in their bed.
Yeah, that was horribly offensive to somebody. So
yeah.
Oh my God, so funny.
I think Dianne has our review. Hey, we have a review, right?
Yes, we have a review
of the week.
It's awesome, too. I found this podcast when I was pregnant and doing research on breastfeeding. The women in my family didn't breastfeed, so I didn't have a lot of advice, nor have I seen a lot of people in my life breastfeeding. You girls have made me trust my body so much. We are only in the beginning of our breastfeeding journey at 6 weeks, but things are going so well and have been since day one. And this was submitted on November 26th, so that baby is still pretty little. I got so many compliments at the hospital for me and my husband's knowledge about positions, colostrum, and everything else. I hand extracted colostrum many weeks before I gave birth, and I really think that helped me learn my breasts and how to get the milk out for those first couple of days of breastfeeding. Highly recommend extracting colostrum before the baby's born. Thank you for all your knowledge and making me trust my body and my baby. And this is fantastic. She said we give the best advice ever. And we do have an episode on antenatal hand expression and getting that colostrum out before you have your baby. So if you are listening and you're pregnant and you're interested in that, definitely check that episode out. Because like she said, that was really helpful. And she learned a lot about her body and was able to hand express milk for the baby after the baby was born. So it can be really, really just so beneficial for you to do that. So we'll link that in the show notes and definitely check out that episode. But thank you so much for sending that in. We really appreciate it. And I'm so glad everything is going good. And I love that she said that the hospital was really impressed with her and her husband's knowledge. So I don't know if she was teaching him as she went along or she had him listening. Sometimes we have dads that listen, which is fantastic. We love that. Or if, like I said, maybe she just taught him, which is also amazing. Yeah. And great. You're a great team. So thank you so much for sending that in for us. You're on your way.
Lucky babies.
I know, lucky babies.
Before we move on, I have to go back to my post office situation for 1 second so I can read a review and just so I can get everybody over there reading this. Chris says, if you value your time, civility, and positive frame of mind, stay as far away from this post office as possible. Dear Lord Jesus, weep for the miserable and doomed patrons who unknowingly stumble into this hell realm without first consulting Google reviews. That's my post office.
That's very creative, and I love it.
Please don't say that about us.
I know, please don't.
But we love creative reviews. Anyway.
Yeah.
We have an interesting episode for you today. And we always talk about all these ways to protect our babies, like with colostrum and breastfeeding and safe bed sharing and all these things. And there's another way that you can protect your family that we don't really ever think about. And it's insurance. But don't turn this episode off because it really is an interesting episode and it's a good listen.
Yeah, for sure.
I know people hear insurance and it's like,
I know. But who would have ever thought that your newborn would need insurance or that your kids need insurance or that you need insurance? Like people don't think about that until they get old. They're like, oh yeah, I need insurance.
Right.
Like Abby and I don't have insurance. We should, but don't. And it's just something you don't really think about.
Yeah.
And we should.
It's got us thinking now.
Yeah. And we wanted to share the information with you all.
Yes. And Whitney Thompkins is here and she's amazing. And let's get to it.
Awesome.
All right. We are here with Whitney Thompkins, a life insurance advisor. And thank you so much for joining us today, Whitney.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And you and I met at Babies and Bumps. I think it was last year when we met the first time.
It was earlier. It was earlier this year.
Well, yes. I think maybe that's when you remember meeting me.
Yeah.
I remember maybe we didn't really. I remember your like your booth and like what you did because it really stood out to me. It was something I'd never heard of before. Obviously, I've heard of life insurance, but what you do particularly, I'd never heard of. So, yeah, I'm really excited that you're here and you can tell us about it. So maybe start with telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this.
Absolutely. So as you said, my name is Whitney Thompkins. And so I kind of, no one choose to get in life insurance. It is not the profession of choice. It is the one that You usually, like, most people either stumble upon it or it's something where, oh, I was doing this and someone recruited me. But my degree is in marketing, and I took a marketing job at a financial company, and his focus was on life insurance, but it was annuities. And I took this marketing job. I was like, cool, not the most interesting thing in the market, but it's a job. I can save some money, and then I can maybe find something else more interesting to market down the line. Mm-hmm. Well, I promise within like 30 days, I realized it was so much there for me to learn. And at that point, it was really for me just for personal reasons. I wasn't even thinking about, oh, I will one day sell life insurance. I just thought, I will one day have a family. At this time, I didn't have a family. I will one day have a family. Why not get as much of this information as possible? So then it could benefit me in the future. And so that was within the first year. I was kind of focusing on myself with it. And then as the years went on, I just realized it was something that just wasn't talked about. Unless you came from a background where either your parents were financially well off and life insurance was a conversation and the way to leverage it was a conversation, or your parents were actual agents, it's normally not a conversation around most dinner tables. And I thought, well, how about I become that conversation? How about I go into those places that these conversations aren't being had at, they should be, and I start talking about it. So I got my license when I was working there. I was there for about 6 years. After 6 years, I left there and I started my own company so I can kind of focus on the demographic that I wanted to focus on. And I'm going into my 3rd year as a business owner of Your Family, Your Legacy.
That's amazing. And you're right. Like life insurance, I kind of know what it is. My kids were like, "What are you going to talk about today?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm talking to this, person about life insurance." And they're like, "What's life insurance?" And I was like, it's that thing, when like the way I explained it was like, if someone dies, it helps cover the expenses.
Yeah.
Is that is that right?
Yeah. And that was like originally when life insurance was created. It was originally created because, women did not work. So you had wives who were losing their husbands and they did not work and they weren't really allowed to work. And their husbands lost when their husband passed, they lost their income. So it was like, what do we do? Unless the husband had a ton of assets and money, that wife would find herself in a really bad situation. So they came up with a life insurance type of structure where it was like, well, you can pay into this product. And when something does happen to you, we will continue to take care of your wife and your children beyond you being here. So that was originally the whole intent of life insurance. So it kind of makes sense. Okay, life insurance, if something happens to a life, it's insured. And then it has evolved. It has evolved to something where it allows you to not only be protected if the husband passed away, but what about the wife? We a lot of times, even with a stay-at-home mom, if something happens to her and she's the cook, the clean, the childcare, she's the house manager. If something happens to her, that husband cannot work like he used to work, because now he has to take on these other responsibilities or pay for someone too. So then you realize, oh, this stay-at-home mom life is valuable as well. And then you trickle down and you think, okay, your children. Yeah, okay, now they don't really financially contribute, but if something happens to them, would that affect you to be able to financially contribute to the home for a particular amount of time?
Oh my God, yeah.
And then when you start beginning to think about these things, you say, wow, like everyone alive should have life insurance. It should, we don't really think about it that way, but it should be second nature. When someone is born, just like when you buy a car or you buy a home, you get life insurance. But it just hasn't been done. And unfortunately, we see the we see the negative impact of people not realizing the value of it and not realizing the importance of it, not having the education on it, when we do have children that passed away and people have to rush back to work. And unfortunately, they're still grieving, but they still have other children. They still have other things going on. And you realize this person is a shell of who they once was because they never got the support to the support they needed to be able to, somewhat get past it.
Yeah. And you're right. Like nobody talks about this. And I think a lot of people think like, well, I don't have a lot of money. So like you hear about life insurance in like a movie, like a murder movie. He was murdered for his $5 million life insurance policy or something. Yeah. Right. And then, so it's just like, well, I don't have a lot of money. So no, I don't have life insurance.
And then who wants to leave? And then you have the people who say, who want to leave themselves vulnerable? That if that's the case, I don't want to give anyone opportunity.
I don't want to be killed for my policy.
I don't want to give anyone a reason to do it either. That is part of a concern, and I think that is why, because if we only see it from one perspective, then of course that perspective become reality for us, or the only viewpoint, versus if you do begin to have conversations and you realize, I talk to people every day all around the United States, and everyone has a story of someone who had life insurance and someone who didn't. And they always tell me how much more of a smoother process it was for the family who had it versus the one who didn't. And then even with life insurance evolving, now you have policies that will pay out if you get sick. They will pay out if you're diagnosed with cancer. They will pay out if you have a heart attack, a stroke, you have a stroke. So now you're talking about, this is really becoming life insurance. Like, yeah, death is going to happen to all of us one day, but we do have a possibility of just getting sick where we don't pass, but we can't do the things that we once been able to do to bring in income. So being able to draw $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 from my life insurance policy to help keep my bills paid, that's game changer.
That is. And it's so not exactly how, I wonder if this is like some of the fear as well. It's like insurance companies don't have a great reputation right now. And as we see there's a big news story right now about an insurance company. And I think people have just completely lost trust in these companies. Like, we pay into health insurance and they end up not really covering a whole lot, or you get denied and or pre-existing conditions, keep you from getting it. But that's not your experience with this.
Absolutely. It's not. And it has been even in a life insurance space, there has been some where, in the past we had insurance agents going door to door. So I'm not sure if you remember the insurance guy coming to your grandma's door to pick money for it. So, the bookkeeping was horrible. So you would have people paying into policies for years, and then your loved one passed away and they like, oh yeah, it's $10,000. So they've been paying on it for 90 or 80 years and all it is $10,000. Wow. I would have thought it would be a lot more than that, but you had, individuals who weren't honest in the agent space. So I do understand the concern, and I kind of give a little pushback with it, because it's just like insurance in general, like even with health insurance and car insurance and homeowners insurance, we have those concerns in all those other spaces, but we still take care of it. As much as I even with, we had an issue with our plumbing in our home, we had an issue with that in the home. They were like, oh, because they would cover the damage it caused, but not the damage of the, not fix the plumbing. I'm like, okay. But that did not make me stop my coverage.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like I'm very critical of health insurance, but I wouldn't dare go without it.
Exactly.
You wouldn't dare. But we go jolly through life without life insurance.
Oh, they're not going to pay out. Like, okay, so that's a risk
So we're not going
to take.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's so true. So what is like, what is your like, so what do you tell parents? Like, what are you, or what is because your demographic is children?
It's moms. It's children. So initially it was children. So I was focusing on like children policies, but I realized that so ideally if I could fast forward, 50 to 100 years when I'm no longer here and my daughter or someone else is running your family, your legacy, I would love for it to be a space where we are ensuring children and children only, because we have been at that point, we have educated the masses enough where we purchase a policy first. So we won't have to buy adult policies because they will already be established at childhood. So that is the long-term goal. But right now, unfortunately, because I'm in a space where I'm now educating individuals, I mean, you have policies where you purchase it on a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old, like let's say $50,000 or $100,000, they will pay in a lifetime of their policy. Let's say they pay on it for 20 years, they will pay $17,000 for that $100,000. But if a 60-year-old bought that same policy and paid on it for 20 years, they're paying close to $100,000 for that $100,000. So my goal is we buy the right policies first. We won't have to then try to double down in adulthood and buy more policies or buy new policies. So unfortunately, because just where we are, I have to work with the mom. So my biggest goal is let's make sure you're adequately covered. Let's make sure you have enough coverage that God forbid if something happens to you and someone has to raise your children, they have the funds to do so. And as we make sure you're covered and your spouse is covered, then or your partner is covered, then we can make sure your children and making sure they're covered. I'm going to put possibly at that time their children on as a rider, because financially, when you're trying to play catch up, you can't insure everybody. And I'm never ever trying to put someone in a position where, their life insurance is a car note or, that's just not realistic. But if I can say, let's put your children on as a rider. So everyone in the house right now, God forbid if something happens, they're covered. That's my most important thing. Then after we have the coverage in place, now we have a relationship where in next year when we get together, or 2 years we can get together, I can now educate you on why it's important to establish those foundation policies for your children. And then you can move them over one by one. But being able to do like these babies and bumps events where I'm talking to a lot of first time moms, we can get it in fast. You don't have to now try to play catch up, because it's easier to insure one child with a great policy than try to do 4 or 3, so if we can do one and get them insured, get them protected, and get them there's policies where we can just make sure their death benefit is covered and then their living benefits, which is going to be if God forbid they get diagnosed with cancer, have a stroke, cardiac arrest. I just had a friend whose son passed away 17 on the football field, and that was heartbreaking. It was so unexpected. But if we can make sure that is in place, and then for those other parents that say, you know what, I want a little bit more, we can do policies for their children that also allows them to leverage the policy. So this policy can eventually help with college, starting a business, buying a home. They can literally leverage the policy throughout their entire life as a personal line of credit. And in the background is still acting as life insurance. So you're doing 2 things at once.
Wow. So so paying into this, so people you're basically taking a percentage of your paycheck and putting it aside. Is that what you're doing?
No, you're just paying it like a monthly payment, like you would your car insurance.
Right. Okay. So I mean, yeah. So you can find policies for any kind of level of income.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, if your budget is $25, be honest with me. I will find you something for $25 if possible, or close as I can get to it. Now, I have individuals who are doing $1,000 a month for their children. But they have it. And they're like, their goal is when my child reaches 18, I want them to be able to do whatever they want to, take any type of loan from that policy, and they never have to utilize a bank ever in their life. And that's what they're setting up for. But for someone who can't, like someone who needs to start at 20, I have people that have my daughter's first policy, and it was a cash going policy for her to leverage. I did $75 a month. Like that was where I could start. And then I have parents who they only have $75 for the entire family they need to be able to take care of. And I try to get as close to that budget as possible.
And so you're kind of acting as like a you're like a guide for the family.
I'm a broker.
Okay. So you're like shopping around.
Absolutely.
Trying to find the best deal for us.
Yes. And that's the difference between, so with life insurance, you have like, you could go to like your car, whoever insure your car. I don't want to say like company names, but whoever insure your car, you could go to them and they could possibly sell you life insurance. Most of those companies have life insurance, homeowners insurance. Those companies are called captive companies. So a captive company only can sell you that one company's product. So I can't shop around. If we don't have it here, I can't get it. Like if you don't, and some people don't fit in the guidelines that they offer for life insurance. So unfortunately, we can't insure you. Versus me, I'm not captive, I'm independent. So I'm able to say, okay, well, if this company won't be able to insure you because you're on 3 blood pressure medications, this company will. Or, this person might not insure you because of your BMI. I have that a lot. This company will. I have children. And that's the other crucial part about why I do what I do, and I do events like Babies and Bumps, is unfortunately children are declined for life insurance. So as I'm getting more and more in depth in these children's policies, not children's policy, but life insurance policies for children, because I do not like children's policies. So I never will recommend a policy that's labeled children's life insurance. Those policies are overpriced and they're just marketed that way. So, parents can be like, oh, I'm going to get a life insurance policy for my child. But you can buy a traditional like whole life policy or an IUL policy for your child that's created for just anyone, and they will insure a child. So just because it's not labeled children's life insurance. But I say that to say that kids have been declined for things like autism, not meeting milestones, learning delays, not like different speech, like different things, because a life insurance company don't have a lot to go with when you're insuring a 4-year-old or 5-year-old. So what they're looking at is those notes that the doctors put on their chart. So they're reading the chart and saying, oh, wow, they're not meeting milestones. Like, is this going to develop into something more? We're going to hold off insuring this child until they turn 8 or 18.
That's not fair.
It's
right?
I see, and because I look at policies now from a place of risk, I understand their point of view. Like as a mom, and if I wasn't in this industry and I haven't done, I would definitely agree with you. Like, how dare they not? But you can put a life insurance policy on a child as early as 14 days old. It is not my fault that you waited until this child got all these notes on the chart. And now you want me to take a risk when there's red flags everywhere telling me that this child could have issues in the next 5-10 years that I'm going to have to pay out for. Like, it's
that's
not
so funny. Yeah. I mean, that's true. I mean, the life insurance, the companies have all this money and they're going to pay it out. They don't want to be paying it out to.
They don't, and I wouldn't say they don't want to. It's not that they don't want to pay it out. They don't want to pay it out before they got paid for it.
Right. Yes. Okay.
And the earlier I have to pay it out, the less I was paid for it. So I need to make sure that I'm insuring individuals who are, obviously things happen, but if I see red flags, I need to make sure I am minimizing those red flags as much as possible with a great pool that if I have, 1% or 2% accident happen and we have to pay it out, the people who are paying is going to offset that.
Yeah. So your advice, because people listening to this podcast are probably in their 20s and 30s. If there's anybody listening in their 40s, I'm not, I am too. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to say, the vast majority of people listening are probably in their 20s and their 30s, and they have a baby, maybe under a year, maybe somewhere between 0 and 2. I'm just trying to figure, the majority.
Absolutely.
So your advice to them is to, as soon as possible, get this policy.
Absolutely. Even if it's a rider on your policy. So the first thing is, as soon as possible, they need to have coverage for themselves. Like you are your child's biggest asset. That child cannot work. That child cannot do anything. So you need to financially, just like you protect yourself with your car, your home, you need to protect yourself first. So you need to make sure you have coverage. And to be honest, if I could say, your work policy isn't it. Your work policy, if you leave that job or you get sick, you're going to lose that coverage. And if you're sick, no one else is going to cover you. So now you lost your job coverage because you're no longer working, because you're, going through chemo, whatever you're going through. And now no other insurance company wants to insure you because you're already sick.
Oh, yeah.
So have something outside of your job. I've done the quotes after quotes, term policies. Make sure if you get a term, which will be as probably the same cost as what you're paying on your job, just make sure it has living benefits, so it'll cover if you get sick, and also it can be converted. So being converted means that you can make this term into a permanent policy down the line if you needed to. Because a term policy is time, 10, 20, 30 years. If you're 20, 30 years is only going to take you to 50. So you want to be able to either convert it over to a permanent policy when you're ready to do so. And you want to make sure it has those living benefits that if God forbid you get sick, you can access it as well. But first, you're covered. So that's number one. And then if your budget is small, when you cover yourself, make sure you add your children on as a rider. When you add your children on as a rider, this provides them coverage that God forbid if something happens to them, but it also provides guaranteed insurability. So between the day you buy the policy until they're 25 years old, when you are ready and your budget allows you to get them their own policy, you can do so with no questions asked. If there was a bad diagnosis, if they were sick, anything, they cannot deny that child because they are on your policy and they're guaranteed insurability. So that would be my start. If you can't give them their own policy and you don't have one, get them one with yours. And if you have one and they just need one, just get a small policy. Like I said, it could be $20, $30 a month, but get them something, because the policy you buy for them at one could possibly be the policy that they insure their family with if they can't get approved anywhere else.
That's all very fascinating. I'm learning so much. I feel like I've learned more in this episode than I've learned in any episode of the podcast. Because it's like, it's like people are this breastfeeding podcast. It's like, what are they talking about insurance for? And it's like, oh my God, we all have to know this.
Yes.
And I don't know any of this.
Yes, it's so important. It's so important. It's something we like. This isn't like, because even with breastfeeding, like some people breastfeed, some people don't. Some people this isn't that. Everyone has to deal with this. It's not, to one demographic, one age, one race. This is everyone. Everyone has to experience this. So unfortunately, it's just something that we haven't talked about. So I'm trying to recreate a narrative around it, because it's kind of tough for me. It's tough for me to get in those spaces where they're talking to new moms about breastfeeding and and safe sleeping and and I'm like, bring me in about life insurance. They're like, that's not important. Are you kidding?
I know. I'm so glad that you came into this space, because it's so needed. And I don't understand why is this not. Because surely insurance companies want people to buy policies. I don't understand why why have we not heard about this? It's all that's going to happen is they would get customers.
More business.
Yeah. Why don't we hear about this more?
Well, I have a theory. My theory is one, you make more money as an agent and an insurance person putting a policy on an older person.
Oh.
They make more money. So if I have a 1-year-old or a 5-year-old who has a policy and they're paying, and a parent is paying, let's say $50 a month for that 1 or 5-year-old, that $50 policy a month is an easy $100,000 policy. If I have a 65-year-old that wants a policy for about $50 a month, or even a 60-year-old, that's going to be a $10,000 policy.
Yeah.
So now you're paying the same amount, but they're getting a fraction of the death benefit as that 5-year-old will get.
Yeah. So it does benefit them to really focus on the older population.
And it's easier, to be honest. Like for most agents, it's easier to focus on the older population. Like you talk to a 60 or a 50-year-old about life insurance, they're like, oh yeah, I need that, because they know the value of it, because they are, in their second half of life. Yeah. Versus when with talking to a 20 or 30-year-old, I have to now educate you. I have to tell you how important it is. I have to do all these things for possibly a smaller payout from it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like trying to tell a teenager like why you should not jump from that second story like balcony. Like no, don't jump from way up there. You might hurt yourself, because when you're young, you think like, well, nothing's going to happen to me.
Absolutely.
I'm young. I'm fine. I don't need life insurance. That's for old people. I can just flail around in life and everything will be fine. And then you get a little bit older and then you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Until it's not. So we have, and normally it's a friend or a close relative, and we hear they lost a family, they lost a husband, a wife, or a child, and we like, oh wow, I didn't think about that, and then it's scrambling. It's just one of them things where it's like, once I start talking to people, everyone, the light bulb goes off. Like, this makes so much sense. Like, yes, I 100% understand why you do what you do, and I 100% believe I need this. But it's just having that conversation first.
Yeah. So I've asked you all the questions that I can think of to answer, but you as an expert, is there anything that I'm missing, or that we're, that kind of pieces or things that we should know from your expert opinion?
Yeah, so I did hit on a little bit about, like I mentioned your work policy. I also mentioned the difference. So in life insurance, a lot of people will go, is either whole life or term. Like, oh, I want to buy a term or whole life. I would like to just kind of talk a little bit about what life insurance have become. So whole life and term is a temporary policy is term, and a permanent policy is whole life. In your temporary policies, which will be a term policy, I want you to also include like a work policy. Your work policy is a policy you have as long as you're working for the company. Once you no longer work for the company, you lose the coverage. A term policy is a policy you have as long as you pass away between 10, 20, 30, or 40 years, depending on the term. Then you also have credit, like policies through credit unions. I'm not sure if you're with a credit union, but you will get a notice from a credit union that say, hey, we will offer you this coverage for X amount of dollars. The reason why they're able to offer you this coverage with no type of health exam is because they have underwritten the credit union. So this policy will be active as long as you're with the credit union. If you leave the credit union, you lose the coverage. So any policy that you could lose the coverage outside of you making your payments, that is a temporary policy. Then on the permanent side, I mentioned like whole life. Whole life is the most common one. But then in addition, you have like IULs, ULs, and then GULs. I know you kind of like made a mention about individuals who are 40. You are 40 years old or older. A GUL is going to, especially with everyone on this podcast, most likely have children. A GUL is going to make sure you leave a legacy for your children, because GULs are inexpensive permanent policies. So unlike a whole life policy, I recently did a quote where a whole life policy I want to say she was 28 years old. She had 3 children. Her whole life policy was like $240 or $50 when we read the quote for a $300,000 whole life policy, paid up in 30 years. We did the policy in a GUL. That's a guaranteed universal life policy. That payment drops to $140.
Oh.
This is $300,000 paid up in 30 years. She is guaranteeing that when she passes away, even if it's at 100 years old, she's going to leave her adult children at least $100,000 apiece.
Wow.
Like that is out of the box thinking. That is saying, you know what? I am preparing that I am not going to be here forever. And even if you're an adult, and I always like bring parents to where they are, we're the adults with the senior parents. So I think about my mom who has a very small life insurance policy. It is not going to be enough for nothing but taking care of her final expenses, which is great because some people don't have that. Some people have to fundraise or pull money from 401k or out their savings to take care of it. So I'm grateful for that. But I also know that I am self-employed. And even if I wasn't self-employed, most jobs offer 3 to 5 days of bereavement.
Yeah.
So if I just lost my mom, do I really want to go back to work in a week or two?
No.
So from a mom perspective now, because life insurance is cheaper for me, I can think fast forward and think about that for my daughter. Let me have enough for her now that she can not only bury me, but then take time off of work.
Yeah.
So she can process some things. So she don't have to be caught up in a rat race of, I have to keep the lights on. Yes. And that is the type of thinking that I would love to encourage moms to begin to think about. And then if you are in a situation where, like me, my mom, I bought a policy for my mom myself. So now she has her small policy to cover her final expenses, but I have a very small policy on her. It is not a lot, but it is enough that if I need to take a month or 2 off of work, I can and be comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the kind of that really is such a big thing that we want for our kids. We want our kids to have, because in our country, money means freedom and security.
Yeah.
And, this is like what we're all hoping for our kids, right? To be able to have freedom and security, to be secure. Like when you pass away, you can, and you're no longer here. And how does anybody else constantly worry about that? Because I'm just like, oh my God, what if something happens to me? They're going to be so, my husband can't find the scissors. My kids are still little. I worry about this.
No, I don't really, because I think my prayer is that, Lord, please let me be able to raise my own kids. I only have one daughter. She's 3. And I really do want to be the one to raise her. I want to pour into her. And I know that some requests are granted and some requests are denied. So I fall on the denied side, which I hope I don't. At least financially, I know she'll be fine. I have 2 policies. I have a large term. And the reason why my term is large, and this is something that's beneficial for people to know too, I have a large term because we were buying our home. So I want my husband to be able to pay off the house if something happens to me. And then also I have enough money that he can put some money aside for her, put $100,000 for her when she's turned 18. And then he can raise her. My husband, he's a truck driver. He might not want to go on the road, he just wants me. So he has a year of salary for himself. And that's what I say, pay off the biggest bill. So have your life insurance policy pay off the biggest bill, your salary 1 year, his salary or your spouse partner's salary 1 year. And then if you can, $100,000 for the child. That's how much in term. That policy for me cost me $35 a month.
Whoa.
$35 a month.
Really?
$35 a month.
Wow.
And I bought that policy at 32 years old, $35 a month. So that's my just in case something happens.
Yeah.
Then I have a permanent policy. I have a GUL. I mentioned that. And that is my legacy for her. So if prematurely I pass, she'll get the term and the GUL. But ideally, I want that term to fall off. I don't want to use it. That was just in case. And then my legacy to her as an adult woman would be my GUL.
Okay. Yeah. And that doesn't go away. That kicks in if something happens, if something happens to you, or whenever you pass.
Absolutely. Because the permanent, so the GUL, that's the permanent policy, which could be a whole life, or depending on, like, if I'm talking to someone with no kids, in their young, like in their 20s, I always go with whole life, because you want to be able to access the cash value. I tell people, what if you don't have children? So, you want to be able to access that cash value if you need to. So go more the whole life route or the IUL. But for people with children and you want to leave a legacy, I think a GUL is a great option. And that policy is the one I hope to use. Is not big enough that it could just be my policy for her, because if I pass away prematurely, it will barely cover the house. So that isn't enough to just have. So I have to have that term to supplement it as well.
Oh, okay. So this is something so people were just given a ton of information and now they're worried. They're like, okay, wait, this sounds like something I really need to do. And so they should contact you and you can help them.
They should contact me if they, I would say, definitely contact me. I tell people that if you want someone who cares about you, like, definitely contact me. And because I can't speak for anyone else. But if you can't talk to me, because obviously I can't talk to everyone in the world. Right. I'm trying. I'm licensed in 21 states. So I'm definitely trying. Oh, wow. But I can't talk to everyone in the world.
Yeah.
So if you can't talk to me, I would encourage you, just talk to someone where when you say what you need, they tell you what you should get. That's important to me, because people are only going to tell you they need what they know. So you can contact me and say, yes, Whitney, I need a life insurance policy for $200,000, a $200,000 term. And I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to run that for you. But then I'm going to also say, tell me a little bit about your family. How many people, how many children do you have? Is your home paid off? Like, I'm going to begin to ask you more questions, because I want to make sure you have the right protection, not to just protect you now, but also to protect your children later. So if you can work with me, that's awesome. And if you can't, just be mindful. Take the choosing of the person who is going to protect your family in regards to life insurance a little bit more higher priority. We have people who will go online and do a quote, do everything online and never talk to an agent. And that's very dangerous. Like, you're putting yourself in a position where you could be getting a tenth of what you need, or you could be spending a decent amount of money, but that money could be put towards a better product.
Yeah.
So I would say just make sure you're talking to someone who definitely has your best interest in mind. You've heard about, make sure have your little check mark, living benefits, check. If it's a term convertible, check. Can I see any illustration that this is going to last me my entire life? That's important. They should be able to show you on black and white when you're whatever age you are, that death benefit stays the same. If that death benefit changes, that's a red flag. And they should be able to show it to you. So can you show me in black and white that in this illustration that I'm going to have this death benefit at 100?
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get those 3 checks, then you're in a good place.
Okay, that's great. I mean, because you were talking before, like, oh, maybe you could check with where you get car insurance or where you get your homeowners insurance. You can check.
People can.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. You don't want to call the insurance company because they're just going to be like, okay, here's our products, and try to sell you a product, right?
And they don't sell many life insurance policies.
Okay.
Like, that's an add-on for them. And they often do it. Like, when you go to them for your car, they say, oh, do you need life insurance? It's like an add-on versus work with someone that is their specialty. That is something that they just focus on. If you if you had a heart problem, you're going to a cardiologist. You're not going to a dentist. Like you're going to
right. Yeah. And you don't work for insurance companies. You work for families, and families
Absolutely.
can work with you, and you can help them find something that fits their family.
Absolutely. I give the life insurance companies pushback. Some, like the conversations I have with the insurance companies, my clients would never know about them. Like sometimes they ask, they'll ask something about their spouse, and I'm like, what does that matter? They're like, oh, never mind. I'm like, why are you asking that? Like, oh, never mind, or they'll have a new person and they don't really understand underwriting. Like, so yes, I work for the family, and I'm the liaison. I'm the person that connect you with the right product. I tell people, like, they be like, oh, it's just so much information. I feel overwhelmed. And
yes.
I tell them,
that's how I feel.
I say, well, what do you do? And they usually say, oh, I'm a nurse, or I'm a whatever. I'm like, do you think if I came and tried to do your job, I would be overwhelmed? She was like, you would be. I was like, just find someone you trust and let them lead you through it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can, obviously, I think anybody listening to this podcast would feel comfortable contacting you.
Absolutely.
You sound very genuine and knowledgeable and all of that. And I also know that you have, you're on social media, and you do like little TikTok, like you're on TikTok, and
ton of videos.
You share a lot of information.
Oh, so much information. People binge watch my videos. Like I'll have people send me an email. Like I have been so blessed to be able to do what I do. Like most of my clients come from social media or like me doing like the expos, but most of them it's like social media. I have people email me at like 3 a.m. like, I have been binge watching your videos for the last 4 hours. I need you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the email.
I know. I feel like today I'm going to be like, Josh, my husband, I'm like, listen to this episode and we got to call Whitney and figure something out because
we can do better.
We need to do better.
No, and that's the goal. I'm so grateful to be able to do what I do. And that is the ultimate goal. I just want people to realize like things can be better. We have enough worries as mothers. Yeah. What the one less worry can be, financially, would everyone be okay? That's one less worry that we can take off the list.
And that's amazing. That is such an amazing thing to offer people. And so the TikTok that we're talking about is Your Family, Your Legacy.
Yeah, I'm Your Family, Your Legacy on TikTok and Instagram. Okay. I'm also Your Family, Your Legacy on Facebook. And my website is www.yourfamilyyourlegacy.com.
Okay. And all of that information I'll put down in the show notes so that people can find the direct links and everything.
Right.
And if they want to contact you, can they go to your website? Is there's like a contact thing or just your email?
Yep. There's a booking link. I am grateful. I'm usually like booked out about 4 weeks in advance. So right now I'm looking for the second week of January.
Okay.
So I will say, just be patient. Be patient. Yeah,
just schedule the appointment.
I will. If you schedule it, I will show up. I have not canceled an appointment yet for a client. So I promise you, if you schedule it, I'll be there. Sometimes people get impatient. They start emailing me and messaging me. I'm like, I can't cut you in front of the line because it's just not fair. But I am very intentional about if I do see, if I have a video that does really well and I see one time I was 2 months booked out, I tried to add a few more days just so I will not have to wait so far with me.
But, you've gone this far with not having your life insurance policy. You can go a few more weeks waiting for Whitney's open schedule.
That's how you thinking too. Okay, that was a rush.
Exactly. But I'm like that. I'm like, oh my God, I just found this out. We have to do it right now. It's an emergency. It's like, wait, we've gone 13 years with our kids without it. We don't want to go too much longer, but a few more weeks will be okay. It does feel like an emergency though when you think about it.
And I try to keep that because I'm always really patient with people. The first appointment is just information. I take information. I give you quotes. I run information. I do not do applications on the first appointment.
Yeah.
And that's just because I don't want people to feel pressured to do it right there. So I don't do applications on the first appointments. And sometimes I kind of feel like, okay, Lord, just keep them protected until we do the, I never want to be the one that's holding off and then something happens. It hasn't happened yet. And I just pray it never does, that they can, that nothing. I had a client that said, I'm wrapping my husband and the boys up in bubble wrap until Monday.
Yes. Boy, I can relate to that. I have two sons. I might, depending on the day, I'm like, we're not going to the emergency room.
Yes.
Not do that.
Oh my goodness. And I have a daughter, but she's just a little daredevil. And it's like, sit down. Like you just, no fear.
That's the thing. The youngsters don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know. And they're, your brain, as far as risk goes, stays, 10 years old until you're in your 40s. And then you're like, oh crap, my life is half over.
Right, my back hurts so bad, my knees, like all that jumping and tunnling around.
Oh, Whitney, it was an absolute delight talking to you.
Thank you.
You shared so much great information. Thank you so much. And you guys go down into the link or down into the show notes and find the links to connect with Whitney and get those life insurance policies secured for the future.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Whitney.
You're welcome. Thank you.